County, Oklahoma. Welcome to another episode of Pastors of Pain. I have a big old smile on my face because this episode is going to be a little different. Father Carey is not here, kind of on purpose. He's probably out and about evangelizing college students and such. But as we've had, on 285 episodes of this show, we've had many special guests, staff members, alumni, seminarians, deacons, all kinds of people. Today, it's my dad.
Yes, it is.
Marty O'Brien is in the house. Now, the first thing you'll notice, Father Carey does the worst imitation of both my mother and father ever. And now you'll get to actually hear him because he doesn't talk like
Father Carey.
Like Father Carey thinks that he does. So my dad is just actually in town for a couple days. What are you doing here, Dad?
Just a visit. I stopped traveling a year or so ago, just kind of health reasons. But now I'm back and feeling fit. So now I'm
the bug is back.
Picking off my children one at a time. I spent about a month ago a few days in Los Angeles with daughter Carrie and son Marty. And now it's Father Brian's turn. And soon I'll go up to Pennsylvania.
Oh, I didn't know about it. Is that happening?
That might be kind of springtime.
That's a little further. Yeah. The LA trip was cool because you went from Houston to LA
on a train.
On a train. That's right.
But we call it, pardon the language, but the train from hell.
Oh.
It was 9.5 hours late getting into Los Angeles. And I only had 2 days. So that wiped out a third of my sightseeing time. So,
and then the fun thing is you're here for a couple days and you're taking a train back to Houston.
I am.
That's not the normal course of the way we travel here in Oklahoma.
Yeah, the famous, what is it?
The Heartland Flyer.
Heartland Flyer from Oklahoma City to Fort Worth. And then Tex Rail from Fort Worth to the United Terminal at the airport, and then a flight home.
I had never heard of Tex Rail until earlier today when you said that. Has that always been around?
It's kind of rapid transit, but on a very sophisticated level because it takes about an hour to get from Fort Worth to the airport. Because it makes, 15 stops along the way.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Okay, wow. Yeah. Wow. Well, anyway, so Father Carey and I were talking, and we were like, "Yeah, we got to put your dad on the show." And my dad is a very interesting person. He can tell you all about himself. But we specifically kind of wanted to talk about Father Carey and I have talked a lot about like our upbringing and kind of how we, why we're Catholics and how we became priests. And but you, Dad, you've had a very interesting life.
I have.
give the kind of the overview of like where you've lived, and obviously you're married to my mom, and you have 5 kids and 7 grandkids.
Yeah, the quick look is
where have you lived?
Born and brought up in the Boston area, specifically Somerville, Massachusetts.
Somerville,
which, as it turns out in retrospect, was a wonderful place to grow up. As a kid and as a Catholic. I went to college at a small school in Massachusetts. I been in the Air Force. I've been kind of Peace Corps for a little while. I eventually didn't go overseas because that's when I met Peggy, my wonderful wife. Met Peggy.
So she prevented you from going to the Peace Corps?
Not prevented.
Oh, okay.
She was the inspiration of saying, the logic was simple. I had never, ever met anyone like her in my whole life. I mean, she was funny, she was pretty, she was bright, intelligent, kind, loving, and a real Catholic girl. And I thought, if I go away to Ethiopia for 2 years, she's not going to be on the shelf.
Yeah.
That just wasn't going to happen. And so we call that event off.
Good call, by the way.
We had 5 kids. I had a great job with Shell Oil Company for just shy of 30 years. Traveled the world.
You did travel a lot.
2.5 million air miles.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's on United. I don't know how much the whole total is around the rest of the world. I always lose count, but probably about 50 countries
Wow.
that I visited or did business in. And then eventually retired, which in the end is the best part of my life ever. I never imagined it was going to be this good.
And did you say the other day, when I was talking to you, and you said have you been retired longer than you worked?
I'm a couple of years shy.
That's wild.
Now 26 years retired, and I worked for Shell for 29. So in a year and a half, I will.
You've closed the gap.
Yeah, or in 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
Close the gap.
Wow. Okay, so other places you've lived. So Somerville, and tell everyone about go ahead. Just tell everyone about Somerville.
Okay. Ideal place to grow up as a kid. We're talking about in my time frame, probably 1947, 48 through 1958, kind of. And in that period of time, so many of the families that were first-generation immigrants had now established themselves and were moving out of places like South Boston, where the Irish were.
Southie.
And East Boston, where the Italians were, and the West End, where the Armenians were, and just everybody had their own little enclave. And when it came time and they had the money and had established themselves, they moved to places like Somerville. And so our neighborhood...
That was like a step up.
A giant step
really?
up. Really?
Okay.
Yeah. No, this was big time for our family.
Because it was more like you grew up in a house, not an apartment.
Exactly.
That was that's the step up, like the Jeffersons,
Yeah. Let's see. Mostly Irish and Italians congregated in our couple of streets, but there was every other country was represented, from Russia and England and France, and it was all over the place. But the Irish and the Catholics and the Italians made up that Catholic base. And in that group, there were 8 of us. That we all seemed like we were all baptized within 3 or 4 months of each other.
Uh-huh.
We received First Communion together, confirmation. We did everything at the church, the missions, CYO basketball.
Oh, yeah.
And we played every single sport that there was to play as that group. So that was our life. With very subtly on the part of everybody's parents, a nice strong influence from the church, from St. Anne's Church. And so we did a ton of things together, both socially. And remember now, we're 12, 13, 14. Anyway, it just turned out to be a great place. I didn't see the change coming, but when it was time, when we started going to high school, 2 of us went to the local high school, to Somerville High School. The balance of the guys all went to Catholic schools downtown.
Why didn't you go to a Catholic school?
It never was discussed. I don't think that, I think financially.
It was a money thing?
I don't know that it was even discussed. I don't think they thought I was a particularly good student, so they didn't want to waste the money on car fare to get me downtown.
What did your parents do for a living?
My father was an electrician. First worked during the Depression. He worked as an electrician for some steel mills in Pennsylvania. And then he got the nice job. He was working for the government in the Boston Navy Yard and Charlestown Navy Yard.
Yeah.
And my mother was a nurse who really gave the house monetary stability.
Oh, she was more of the, I mean, she make more or just was more consistent?
I'm not sure where either were. Neither one were making gigantic money.
Yeah.
But when we were old enough and she went back to work, it changed the whole family. We even bought a car.
Wow.
And so that was a major change.
When was that? Like, how old were you when you bought a car?
Just about 15, 16.
Okay. And other than that, I mean, in Boston, you could get anywhere.
Oh, yeah. Even after that, I didn't
take the subway.
Yeah, the car wasn't that important. You just walked down the end of the street and you could go any place in the world from there.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, when all those people went off to high school, they went to BC High School, Don Bosco, Matignon, Cathedral.
Your brother went to Matignon,
yeah.
Uncle Dave.
Yeah.
How come he got to go to Catholic school? He was smarter than you?
Well, I think that I was now self-supported, supporting myself.
Ah, okay.
And I think he got a scholarship, too. He's a pretty good football player.
Oh, okay.
He got an offer to play for Brown University.
He did?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
He could throw the ball a mile.
That's my middle name for
right.
my Uncle Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what happened was that it pulled everyone apart because now on Friday nights, people were running off to dances and varying things at school, and everybody developed a whole new set of friends. And so that changed rather dramatically. But when it was all over, I looked at it, I thought about it, and I said, man, what a great place to live. Just sports galore. I think for all of those 8 guys, we really set a nice foundation as far as church was concerned.
So your parish was St. Anne's.
St. Anne's.
It's still there.
Still there without the steeple.
Oh, really? What happened to the steeple?
It just got old and they couldn't afford it, so they knocked it down. Or it fell down, I'm not sure. I looked at their webpage one day, and they're like now, like in Boston, they've kind of had to shrink parishes. So like St. Anne's doesn't have its own priest. It's like linked to another church, maybe in Somerville or... Actually, I don't know that.
It's now part of like a cluster of parishes. That's happening all over the country. Yeah. What was that like? What was
It was
St. Anne's?
A lovely church. It had old priests and young priests.
How many priests? I mean,
2.
Okay. Sometimes back then, lots of parishes
those
had...
were not the kind of details that a 12-year-old worries about as to how hard the priests are working. A couple of priests. Oh, and also there was a school there that was run by the nuns.
Yeah?
And in fact, a couple of the...
And you didn't go there?
No. A couple of the kids in our group went to the St. Anne's
school.
Yeah.
Wow. What was it like on the inside?
The church?
Yeah. I've never been there. I really know. I want to go.
Oh, we're talking now. I haven't been there for 50 years.
Yeah. I mean, what do you remember about it?
It was 2-decker.
Oh, yeah?
Big church, very traditional, lovely altar and stained glass windows.
Nice.
Which you should think about.
I told him to put in that plug there.
Yeah. And then downstairs was where they held the kids' mass. And
it was like a double church.
Yeah.
So there could be church upstairs and church downstairs at the same time.
There could be. I don't know that ever happened. It was kind of dingy down there. Anyway, it was like on one of the main streets in Somerville. I can remember riding back and forth on the bus, and it was really kind of amusing because the bus full of people, 40 people on the bus, and 39 of them would, as you passed the door of the church, would go, in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Amen, and then continue the bus trip on.
Wow.
Lovely place.
You walked there? You'd walk to Mass? Wow. The whole family together kind of thing?
No. That's an interesting part. My mother was the religious side of the family.
Uh-huh.
My father simply didn't go to church. But he did one interesting thing. Every once in a while during Lent, he would come out of wherever he was religiously and make us sit or kneel on the hardwood dining room floor and say the rosary, like on a random Tuesday. And then maybe 3 weeks later, we'd do it again on a Friday. And then maybe the next year we wouldn't do it at all.
No explanation?
No, just
it was his way of living out Lent.
Yeah, and the other thing
making you do it.
The other thing he did was that we had a kind of this beautiful, fancy little table about 4 feet high, and he'd break out this big, beautiful Bible and put it on the table and open it to some random page, and that was Lent.
Wow.
It was Lent for him.
Quite the celebration.
In defense of the man, heavy drinker.
Yeah.
I mean, heavy drinker.
Yeah.
A great provider.
Yep.
There was just no question that every nickel was coming into the house. And he left behind some really great traits in terms of honesty, integrity, hard work, all of the things that you would like to
all
impart
those virtues, sure.
On your children or on your friends. And he did that. He really did a good job. So while my mother was the face of the church, he was in the background in his own way doing the kind of thing that makes a family strong.
Did his family go to church?
No.
So he never,
Well, he had 8 children. He had 4 children with his first wife, who died very young.
Mm-hmm.
And then he met and married my mother and had 4 more. I have no recollection of the first 4, because they weren't my mother's children, attending church.
Oh, interesting.
There were no conversations about it. No. The fact is, I don't know what their history was, but it wasn't anything so outward that I would have noticed it.
One of the cool things about my grandpa, who I never met, who died before I was born, I tell people this all the time, that he was born in 1896.
Right.
Isn't that amazing?
It is.
No. My grandpa was born in 1896. That's crazy to me. So he was he was in his 50s.
Yeah.
When you were born.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and that led to his early demise. He was a child and a father of the 20s and 30s and 40s, when most of the first group of the first 4 were built. And then along came this second group, and particularly my sister Judy.
She's younger than you.
She was the youngest one.
So he was maybe in his late 50s.
Oh, more than that.
60?
Yeah.
What?
Trying to cope with
He was in his 70s with a teenage daughter.
Yes. Something close
Get
to
out.
And it just didn't work. It didn't work. They didn't belong in the same house.
Wow. I've never put that all together.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Wow. Okay, so you go to St. Anne's, and then you go off to high school, and then you go off
to college. And this is not the great part of my life. From a college experience, yes. From a religious experience, no.
But I think one thing we talk about on here a lot is, like, Father Carey, works with college students who some people just sort of like, I didn't go in college, or, and obviously some people do and should. And what was that?
I'm not sure. I didn't want to ever really make excuses for it, because I'm not sure there really was one. But the thing that changed the most was that contact between family. When I went off to college, I hardly ever saw my father. I rarely saw my mother. even during summer.
Even though you weren't far away.
Well, I was a 3-hour drive,
Oh, okay.
a 2-hour drive.
That's far.
Let's see, where were we? The contact. I mean, there was my mother all the time, a part of church, and all the rest of our life. And there were my 6 or 7, 8 friends. Now all that was gone. And then I went to a completely different environment. You go off to college. This wasn't a particularly liberal place, but
But your support structure
that's the word
falls.
I'm looking for.
Yeah,
it just
goes away.
It just went away, and so did I. And that was the 4 years of college, and then a couple of years after. And then the greatest thing ever happened to me is I met Margaret Mary Lodge of Two Toilet Irish, West Roxbury, Rosendale.
So we have this phrase in our family. Tell everybody what that means.
What?
The two toilet.
Oh, well, they were just super upper class. That's all.
They had two bathrooms.
They had plates. In addition, they had plates that weren't chipped. And I mean, that was pretty high-class stuff when I met her. Anyway,
they had a television?
Yes.
Yeah.
With more than 3 channels. Anyway, I had mentioned earlier about having met her and changed my life because through the trip to Ethiopia.
So that was legit. I mean, you were going to go to Ethiopia.
Absolutely. I had already been. I was in a special program where you did your training while you were in college. So by the time I graduated, I was already certified with trying to hand me a ticket, to come on, we're going. And in the end, again, I decided solely on the basis of having met Peggy.
And that was like the Peace Corps was like a big thing because that was like President Kennedy.
It was at its,
he was elected in 1960.
It was at its height. Yeah,
you were in college in 1960.
Yeah,
and he was always. I mean, I've seen those speeches and read all that. Yeah. Was that your inspiration? I mean, that everyone was kind of doing cool things for the world.
Yeah, I'm not sure. This was not a save the world thing. I think I liked the idea of traveling and the experience was the way they did the training is I went to UCLA for a whole summer, and, well, I didn't learn it, but I learned a few words like pass me the salt in Amharic. And then when we went back to our home and college, we all were assigned an Ethiopian person to talk to on the telephone, and a big stack of the old reel tapes for the language. And I don't remember his name, but he was at Boston University.
Wow.
And I could call him any time and just chat. And then we all went back between Christmas and New Year's. But by then I was saying, look, I don't want to come. And they said, well, come to UCLA for this.
Because you had met Mom.
Yes.
Oh.
And finally they said, well, look, don't worry about it. Come to Ethiopia with us. And if you don't like it, you can come home. And I thought, wait a minute. I didn't mind going to California for a week because I could hitchhike from there. But if they decided that I had to wait a year.
How do you get home from Ethiopia?
Yeah.
So tell us how did you meet Mom?
We met on Cape Cod at the Clam Shack.
In our family lore, we have this towel.
Ah, that's right, the towel.
There's this,
that was the second
Mickey
meeting.
Mouse towel.
That was the second meeting because we.
Oh, that was the second meeting?
We met then. I still had a year of school, and so we met. Went to church.
That was your first date? All right.
I think that maybe the next day or the day after.
Wow.
There was we're talking a long time ago now, and you're testing a fast-fading memory. But anyway, we did meet again on Cape Cod at the beach in Falmouth on the towel.
And it was like your friend, you were with a bunch of friends and she was with a bunch of friends?
Yeah, these were my Air Force friends. We were doing our summer camp. I'm not summer camp, but our one weekend a month. And we were at Otis Air Force Base. So that was a great assignment, by the way.
And then she was with her teacher friends because she was a middle school English teacher.
I have a quick story to tell.
Please.
She's such a wonderful person. I mean, was then, is now, just absolutely unbeatable and very prayerful. And she had a prayer. And the prayer was, Saint Anne, send me a man with whom I can be happiest and holiest.
That's right.
And she recites this to our children from time to time. And there was one occasion, I don't know, with 2, 3, maybe even 4 of the kids were there when she was telling the story. And their response was, and all they sent was you?
And you got Dad?
That kind of set my place in the family, that everybody really knew my importance.
But she saw, but she felt called to the vocation of marriage. You did too.
Oh, of course.
And then, and she prayed and it was not, I mean, you had one of your friends knew one of her friends or something?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
And that's how it happened.
Yeah.
Kids, stop playing video games.
Go to the
beach.
There was some great
go to the beach and
some great catches out there.
That's right. So then, what happened? So you like asked her out?
Kind of. I mean, it was a bunch of people meeting, and so we kind of separated a little bit from the group, and then maybe the next night was a church night or something along that line. But it was only a couple of days, maybe 3, and then summer was over and I went back to school, and then she was teaching at the time. I think maybe also working on her master's. And then when we met the second time, then we were just pretty much inseparable after that.
Wow. That's amazing. And then how long between when you met to when you got engaged? A year or 2?
Probably a year.
Did you feel like that was too? I mean, some people these days people be like, "Oh, that's too fast. You don't know each other well enough."
Actually, I'm not so sure of the timeline. Whatever it is, it was the right time for me to have the courage to do it, and Peggy to have more courage to have accepted.
Where did you propose to her?
As I remember, it was on the beach in Falmouth.
Was it really?
Yeah.
You went back to the spot?
Well, not for that event. This was everybody's
place. You're like a romantic.
Everybody in our neighborhood went to Falmouth Beach on Cape Cod for the summer and rented houses.
Yeah. Wow. And she said yes, obviously.
She did.
And then how long were you engaged?
I don't know, 6 months maybe.
Okay. Did you do any marriage preparation?
We did, what do you call it? Pre-Cana?
Pre-Cana? You met with a priest and...
No, we went to a meeting. I don't remember meeting with the priest.
Okay. Just a little weekend retreat. That's wild. Wow. And you were how old when you got married?
27.
And mom was 27?
Right.
Wow. Okay, well, we're going to pick it up. We're going to do a round 2. We're going to do a round 2 with Marty O'Brien because we only got to getting married. Now we got to talk about kids and growing up, and then I also want to hear. My dad, I think, has lived through Vatican II.
Yes.
I think there's an interesting kind of history there that we've never had on the show. Anyway, so join us next week for round 2 of My Dad on the Pastures of Pain. Hope everyone has a great week. Thanks for joining us. See you next week. Go Pokes.